we made our way up the track, there were many plaques with motivational poems scattered along the way, encouraging you to keep going.
1.5 k's.
Homestead 1.5 k's, I think, or 1.25. And beach must be 2 3/4. There is a milestone on life's path that brings us to another start, where brighter vistas open out, where clouds grow light and break apart. There is a spot on every road where ruts give place to smoother ways, the place that marks a new beginning and the hope of fairer days. Are you weary of the journey? Does your burden seem too great? Are you fighting uphill battles, struggling with a hostile fate? The milestone at the turning point may be a few steps round the bend. Courage. This may be the spot where joys return and troubles end.
I thought it was a gravestone to somebody who'd collapsed on the way up here and they buried him.
So here we go, a bit of a view.
It's worth it. It was worth the long walk. 4.5 k's.
This is Andy's lookout. What is this life if full of care? We have no time to stand and stare. No time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as roos and cows. No time to see a broad daylight, streams full of stars like skies at night. No time to turn at beauty's glance and watch her feet how they can dance. A poor life this is, full of care, if we have no time to stand and stare. Look, here's the islands. That's South Percy, High Peaks.
These butterflies, are they tiger butterflies?
Well, I'm not sure.
What do you reckon, mate?
This is melting the wax that you get. You see, if you look in that container there, you can see the wax from the cappings from when we took the honey off last week.
And all the green ants.
And all the green ants are helping clean it out. We just put it there because we put it over the further away so that the bees could clean out what they wanted. She's got twins that were born 3 days ago.
Oh, really?
Wow.
And she's got the most enormous udder.
And they like the honey.
Yeah, they do. They love honey. We put out molasses, but we're nearly running out of molasses, so we seriously need to get some more for them. I was going to re-melt these, but I've realised that all I have to do is to cut the bottom off, and the rest will be okay for the bee shop to turn into foundation.
Yeah.
You mean like makeup foundation?
No foundation, which you put into the, ow, get off my toe. It has that, it's a sheet which is pulled out hexagrams.
Yeah.
So this is the perfect shape that bees love. So our creator told them how to make the shape, which is the most efficient shape, the most durable, hardiest shape. And you can't tell me that comes from a blob, because I won't believe you. And so then when we take these, we put those sheets into the frames, and then they pull it out and fill it up with honey, and then we take off the sealed piece, which is that piece on the outside, and extract the honey, and then the bits that we have, it's called cappings, we leave to drain and get a bit more honey off it, and then we put it out for the bees to clean, which is what they've been doing. But because we're leaving for the mainland in a couple of days, we sort of figure, oh, we better get this lot melted so that we can take it with us and sell it. So then I'm going to scrape off the bottom. So
I was going to say, just don't show it to schools. Well, they may not be doing it 100% perfectly right, according to OHS or something.
Oh, okay.
Well, not about the things that normal people stress about, certainly not. To the fact that I don't even have a bank account.
You don't?
No,
I've got one, but there's nothing in it. Emus were Raptor and Geek.
Raptor and Geek, the ones that I remember from here.
Yeah.
Geek was a bit shy and standoffish towards people, but Raptor wasn't. He was beautiful. I was feeding him wheat bix by hand and that sort of.
Was that his staple diet? Was it wheat pigs?
He ate anything.
Anything, yeah.
Whatever he could fit in his mouth, he would attempt to eat. Whether edible or not, I don't think that sort of worried him too much.
No.
Yeah, I would pat him on the head and stuff, and he was really, really friendly with me. We did have some fun with him, of course. When people came walking up the track and stuff, and wrapped straight for them, you know. You got to have some food somewhere. You know?
And did they stand their ground?
Everybody's standing there hanging onto their handbags, and tell them, no, put your hand up in the air, make yourself taller than him, then you'll back off. So I'd have 20 yachties and backpackers and stuff, all goose stepping into the homestead. Yeah, I loved him. He used to chase me on my bike down the hill.
Who won?
Oh, I win all the time.
You win. Just put the throttle up.
Behind you. Thump, 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 and all you see is his head behind you.
This is a replica model of the Islander.
Yes, this is the Islander, the famous island boat that was built out of island timber on Percy Island, and you can see inside here it's got the what they call the knees that they cut out of special shapes. They had to just get the right curvature from paperbark trees.
And how big was the boat?
30 odd foot.
30 odd foot.
It's a Chesapeake skipjack because it had a flat bottom to sit in the lagoon with. I mean, obviously that's on a stand now. But, and then when Andy got it, he put a little dog box on it up here, so it was much more user friendly for sailing on, I suppose. But the Whites used to use this. They'd have 100 sheep. Wow. On their backs with their legs tied up, and they transported them to South Percy. They had sheep on South Percy as well as here. They had 1,500 to 2,000 sheep here, and so all the trees were ring barked to get the grazing, and that's why you'll see a lot of young trees growing now because well, ever since Andy came in the 60s, they obviously stopped ring barking then.
So the whites, they weren't the first people to have the lease on the island, were they?
No,
That's where the Canadians went, though.
They were the Canadians, yeah.
Well, they started from England, but they went to Canada, then they went to New Zealand, and then they came here, which is extraordinary. And he wouldn't allow the family to have any machinery, so everything was done by hand.
Oh, wow.
So you'll see in the history book they used horses and sleds to move things up and down to the beach.
Oh, well, we've just done the walk. That was hard enough.
Yeah, well,
I imagine we had a pack on our back. That was all.
Yeah, you'd feel it. You definitely have to get the walking in the right time.
So how long were the whites here for?
They were here for 40 odd years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Prior to them was the Armitages. Well, there were two or three people. They tried living here and it didn't suit them. But the Armitages were here.
So did he try and grow coffee? I was started reading about that.
1887 or 8, the Armitages came here and they planted up here because it was more clay type soil.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, when you come to the pines, you can see a change of soil, and then they built up here. And when the whites rebuilt the homestead, they used the original timbers. So all these internal timbers and the floorboards, they all came from the original house from 1887.
Wow.
So I love all of these timbers. You can think that there's a story to tell. They were probably come down from a forestry with bullock carts and all, manipulated by hand. Absolutely amazing. And then they'd have to get them out here. Well, in the old days, the steamers always used to come past the island. Because Captain Flinders was the first of the Europeans to actually realise there was a large number of islands here, because it was called the Northumberland Islands by Cook, because Cook was on the mainland and he saw them in the distance. It was a very good telescope, a good day. And then when Flinders came here, he named them after the family name of the Duke of Northumberland. So that was Percy. So you'd have Percy Island, Middle Percy, North East Percy, South Percy, then Pine Ilex had pine trees on it, then Pine Peak because it was steep with pine trees on it, then Hotspur because that was a nickname for the Duke of Northumberland. So you had all the Northumberland group, and then the next group is the Cumberland group. So they are all named after the Duke of Cumberland, and St Bees and Keswick. So they're all places from Yorkshire. So you look at the English maps from these county areas, and you see where all the names come from. It's absolutely fascinating. So Flinders mapped the Terra Nullis, or whatever they called it, the beginning of Australia. So it was up to here. And then Captain King took over. He was on the Mermaid. And then he came back again on the Bathurst. And he had Alan Cunningham on board as the naturalist, and there's the logbook from those trips are in the history book, and King and Alan Cunningham are talking about the hoop pines. They didn't know what they were, they just call them pine trees. They thought they were Norfolk pines like everybody else does. And so he took a sample from one of the Percy Islands, sent it to, this is Cunningham, sent it to the Kew Gardens, and Robert Brown, the curator there, called it Araucaria Cunninghami. So hoop pine, when you look at the Latin name, is from Cunninghami, and they were talking about it right here in this bay. And I find that fascinating. And Flinders on the Investigator, that was in West Bay. And they got their water from when you go up the short track, you'll see at the very bottom in the mangroves there's a white drainage pipe. Well, that's where the fresh water seeps out. So they got their water from there, we think, because they said they dug down and then got water into the barrels. So all the old ships used to stop here and get wood for their fire, for cooking and things, which they seemed to do then, and water. So this was well and truly on the route, north and south.
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. And then when they in 1854, when the vision came with some naturalists to map, they were going all the way up to Cape York. They got here, and there's migratory aboriginals here. They're not here all the time. They were here travelling around the islands, presumably for fish or turtles or whatever at the time. Well, there's no animals here, so there's nothing they could live on apart from, you know, what they could. Don't know what vegetation they would have had here, but certainly, you know, no animals. So they did come from the mainland by canoe. Anyway, there was a tragedy that they naturally were protecting their land. One of the naturalists had a gun, and so they ended up killing, the Aboriginals killed 4 of the people from the boat, and the naturalist that survived that was the chap that actually funded the trip, Walter Hill, and they went straight back down to Brisbane, and he became the curator of Brisbane Botanical Gardens, and he is responsible for discovering all sorts of things. Actually, it says in here, somebody sent us an article from Sunday, March the 8th, 2015, the Courier Mail. Walter Hill, he is responsible for discovering 26 types of sugarcane, 10 of tobacco, 20 grape varieties, cotton, hemp, tea, coffee, many palms which oil could be extracted. He realised they would flourish here in Queensland. And then he also recognised the importance of mangoes, macadamias, pineapples, pawpaws and poinsettias, which is a strange thing to have poinsettias in there. But they get sold all over the world as little Christmas trees, don't they, and pot plants. And every jacaranda in Queensland can trace its line back to a single plant he drew. And we've even got 2 jacarandas here. They didn't come from here because they come from some other country. But, you know, just fascinating. So the incredible things that this island has got connection with, absolutely amazing. So yeah, so once said it's a sad day's work, he told the skipper upon limping back to the Vision, which headed for Brisbane. In only a few months he was appointed the first superintendent of what is now called the City Botanic Gardens, then mainly marsh. So he was the initiator of that whole wonderful garden.
Wow.
Just absolutely fascinating. So there's a lot of history here, and the whole history of the pioneers who have lived here, like the Jimmy Joss, who was one of the first group. They were looking for gold apparently, and then they grew vegetables at the back of the lagoon, and that was what Flinders recommended, growing veggies and timber maybe. And then we had Captain Cook Till, who was making his income from selling Kanaks, and he brought them here to the island till he had enough to go up and down the coast and sell them on to cane people.
Cane farms,
Did he keep them here?
Yeah, he kept them here, and then, but we don't know quite where, but it's clear from the information that he was here the same time as Jimmy Joss at some point. And then he applied, actually Captain Cook Till applied for the leasehold, and he was told he was an unsuitable person. I think, how hypocritical. They don't mind using his, you know, skills to get their labour, but they're not going to let him have a leasehold. So yeah, it was funny. And then he had a daughter here, and she ended up settling in Mackay. They all went back to Mackay when he died, and Mackay was their base. And then that was when Armitage was around. He was around soon after that, and he was here until 1919, I think. And they had a go at growing coffee, and then in the history book it explains that there was legislation that made it difficult for people to have island workers. So then he went into sheep. So I guess that's, you know, making money off the sheep's back then came a thing, and the whites did well on that, and Then when Andy came along, it was the yachties were then the income spinners.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, the sort of evolution of how
it's evolved. Yeah.
Yeah. And these, you can get, that is on iBooks for $25, which is the history of the Hicklings living here, which is actually fascinating, all the little stories, which you appreciate more after meeting Andy. And then the other one is on eBooks for $35.
As we made our way back down the hill, we reflected on our talk with Kate. Middle Percy was made a national park in 2011, with 17% of the island leased by Kate and her partner John Morris. This includes the homestead and the land extending down to the beach, as well as the A-frame. There are plans to cull and eradicate the bee, goat and kangaroo populations. The goats were introduced to the island by the Royal Navy in 1874. The Pearl, a schooner owned by the Royal Navy, was given the mission of leaving goats, planting coconuts and other edible fruits. Many of the goats came from India. There are concerns from the residents and the many yachters that visit the island that the national park will not be able to maintain the island to the standards it has been in the past, and the island may have its uniqueness taken away from it.